And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to glorify bad men that did bad shit to me and my mother. And you know, so I was like, you know what raised me and taught me more about life is this rugged country and being stuck in the mountains with no power. And I was like, you know, it's the Native American route. I'm Montana, and I'd been called Montana since I was a kid, you know, because I was so backwoods, backcountry stuff. So I'm like, that's it. So, you know, we had it legally changed a long time ago. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Where did you, when did you start playing guitar as a kid? When did you start playing music?
I think I was 6 years old. We lived in the Flathead Valley.
You lived in the Flathead?
Yeah, I was born in Kalispell. Don't tell all my Butte people that. But
damn,
my mom had left Butte, so my mom grew up in Butte. My grandmother grew up in Butte. Then my mom left, had me in the Flathead, and then I lived in Kyla, Montana, which is way out there.
Yep.
And I went to find the house that I grew up in, and I got lost.
My wife grew up in Kyla.
No shit.
Yeah.
I went to Kyla Elementary School, and we had a mountain lion alarm and stuff. If lions would come in the playground, I mean, that's weird because nobody's from Kyla. 38.
That's wild. I wonder if you two, because she's 42. Wait, you didn't date her, did you?
Yeah. We're Eskimo brothers.
Yeah.
I was 11. I developed fast with all that.
Well, she was
elk meat.
She was very promiscuous, so
at 11.
Yeah. So yeah, her mom owned Julie's Bar.
No shit.
Yeah, that's Jess.
I went there all the time.
Yeah, at 11.
Probably need to get her in here.
No shit.
That is bizarre. We'd stop there all the time.
Her mom is Julie.
What the hell?
She might be working downstairs.
My mom would flip out if she heard that.
Really?
My mom would lose her mind. We went there all the time because we had Pac-Man's pawn shop that was right down the store from Julie's, and we had the gun store that had the Vietnam-era duck, camouflage duck. I promise you they know exactly where we started, and then we moved off-grid when I was like 6. They know exactly where that is.
Yeah. Yeah, Jerry is her dad, Jerry and Julie.
Okay.
And her dad passed away, but yeah, Jess grew up like waiting tables in there. They had the arena out back, so they would have like ropings and stuff there.
Yeah. And then there was the little camouflage bar past Julie's on the left where they always had a ponytail hanging where a hippie was hitchhiking once and they cut his hair off and hung it off the bar. So I was like, note to self, don't ever grow your hair out in Kyla, Montana. I moved before I did that.
Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah, so I grew up with loggers and weirdo militia people up there, and it was an interesting childhood.
That's amazing. Well, that's a crazy turn of events. We'll have to, when your mom comes back here, we'll have to see.
She will flip out.
I wonder if Jess, I wonder if Julie, is Julie working here today, Henry? Yeah, I don't know. Shoot Jess a text and ask her if her mom should come down in about an hour and meet Tim's mom. Anyway. Well, that's cool. So
that's wild, yeah.
Yeah, so you were born there. So where did the music come in then as a kid?
When we went off grid, I got a guitar from that pawn shop. So we moved way out in the mountains. It was from the time I was 5 or 6 till we moved to Butte, it was lanterns, candles.
Really?
Very remote. The generator would sometimes start, usually not. And I learned a lot of things about using starting fluid back in those days.
Yeah.
And burn my hair off a few times.
Can be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, man. I love that shit. Making blow torches. Like, I'll see if I can get the generator started. I'm engulfed in flames laughing. But if the generator would start, I'd vacuum the house, and then I'd get to watch a movie. It was like my treat for vacuuming the house. But the guitar came in because the TV went off. No video games, no television. I hated it when I was a kid, but then I grew up, and I was like, that was pretty cool, you know.
Yeah, there's an appreciation to that. It's interesting because when I was a lineman, and I've told this story a couple times, but when we would have people out of power, like, you know, a couple city blocks or whatever, neighborhood out of power for some reason, we would show up and there would be kids all over the place playing. Yeah. Like on a summer evening like today, you know, kids everywhere playing, whatnot. We'd show up, people would be out in their backyards, and they'd just be sitting in chairs sometimes, like in the, you know, along the alley, like in the backyard, kind of watching us work, fix the power lines or trim the tree out that came through the line or whatever. And without fail, every time we would slam that cutout home and the lights would come on, it was like cockroaches and the kids were back in the house.
Right.
And if you think about, I mean, obviously, having power is a pretty nice luxury. But if you think about the creativity and production and all the inventions and the stuff that came out of probably people just having time on their hands to not just be sit there and entertained with their eyeballs on a screen.
Yeah.
Music, playing music, art, craftsmanship out in the garage or in the barn or whatever, like all that stuff.
Yeah. I don't think I would have learned. I yell at my kids all the time. I got 4 kids, and I'm like, man, as mad as I get at them for being on devices, and I try to limit it, I'm like, man, I am so ADD. I probably would have never developed or known about this musical thing had I not, if I had access to video games and television and stuff that normal kids had, I don't know that I'd be the musician that I am today. It's kind of lights off. You figure out, what you're made of. And
did your mom make you go play that thing out in the barn so you didn't annoy the shit out of her?
No, it was an acoustic guitar. I'd go in the bedroom and I'd literally light a lantern and sit there, and I'd
just pick
had
away.
A little CD player. I remember I'd always size D batteries. If I was lucky, my mom would buy me a pack so I could play CDs. And then she'd bring me CDs home from the pawn shop, and she wouldn't look at what they were. She brought me like Tool, Undertow, and my mom is so religious, so she's bringing me these like hardcore rock CDs. Yeah. And then she brought me Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion, and like the cuss words in there. And she'd be like, "Where did you get that? You're going to hell." And I'm like, "Mom, you brought this to me." Yeah. And there's like a hidden song at the end of that Tool Undertow album I'll never forget. Because I'm sitting in my room listening to it late at night, got headphones on, and all of a sudden sheeps are bad. And this guy's like doing all this like weird, I don't know, dark preacher stuff. And I'm like, "Mom, you've got to stop bringing me this satanic shit."
That is awesome. Did you have any lessons growing up at all, or did you just kind of figure it out?
I figured it out for the most part, and then I did. My brother's legally blind. He has albinism, and my mom was an interpreter for the deaf, so I spent a lot of time with deaf kids, blind kids, special need kids, and I met a blind guitar player that blew my mind, so I trained with him for a while, did lessons. Not a ton. I'd go to town for school and then usually come back and have to work, around the property, but he taught me a lot of things about guitar, and then later in life I ended up meeting another blind guitar player. I've always been fascinated because I've seen it so many times with blind people and deaf people. They have skills that people that have all their senses don't. They develop an extra one.
Really?
And so some of the most fantastic musicians in the world can't see or, and in rare occasions can't hear. Mozart or Bach, I forget who it is. Don't quote me on that. But
yeah, and that's bonkers. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
What with the instruments, was it always just the guitar for you, or did you have other instruments you like to play?
I did drums in Butte High Marching Band, so I can still get around a drum set.
So did I.
Did you really?
I was a drummer in our band, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't march.
Yeah, I'd march, and I'd love setting off car alarms in Butte, Montana, because I'd have that big bass drum going boom. Anytime I walk by a car that had an alarm on, I'd be hell yeah.
I was the drummer in the pep band, but our school was so small that a lot of times I'd have to like go over and like drum during my own warm up for basketball game for a couple songs.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I wasn't, of course I thought I was good because I was the best drummer in my tiny little class, but I'm sure I was terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't claim to be a drummer. I can get around a drum set, but
yeah. What made you guys move off grid?
My mom married this guy that had this shop up there, and he was kind of the militia movement of the 90s was a big thing.
Yeah.
And so that was his main reason, but it was scary at times because he was a pretty crazy dude. You know? But some of the shit he talked about I see happening today, and I'm like, he was a nutso guy, but then some of the stuff I'm like, oh, I heard about this in 1992 in the backwoods of Montana. So made the best of it, learned a lot of, a lot of things I didn't love, a lot of things I've used today,
Right.
But yeah, I was part of that movement. I was in Fairbanks, Alaska a couple of years ago, and this buddy came up, and he lived down Truman Creek, and it's way up in Kyla, kind of Blacktail Loop area. But they were religious, like zealots, right? So they weren't, they weren't burying AK-47s like we were. They were up there doing religious stuff. He's like, yeah, that Randy Weaver guy would come to your house, and that's why my dad, I want to apologize because I stopped playing with you for a long time. And I was like, oh, yeah, that Randy guy, he made quite a splash, didn't he? And I like tell people that. They're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it was a different world up in the backcountry of Montana in the 90s, I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
So.
It is weird, though. Like, I find people, like, when I tell people about things I think about or worry about a little bit. I don't spend a lot of time worrying necessarily, but like being prepared and being a quote unquote prepper, it's this weird like line that I find myself walking closer and closer to, which I'm not a crazy person, but also like, yeah, I have 4 kids and a family, and also like look around the world and I see how inept I perceive our government to be.
Yeah.
And it makes me like, okay, maybe some of these people aren't as crazy as they sounded, you know?
Right.
And I don't know if it's age or if it's just literally just how precarious it feels like our world's getting.
I ask my wife that all the time. I'm like, are we getting to the age where we're becoming our parents, or is shit really out of hand?
Yeah.
And I've even asked my mom that, and she's like, things are scarier now, and she's all Book of Revelation, you know, always has been.
Yeah.
The end of times is near, Timmy. Prepare to meet thy God. I'm like, I was always waiting. She's like, the good people will be picked off, and they'll be gone. And
well, hopefully he needs a guitar player.
Back. And I was always like looking around, waiting for my mom to disappear and be like, oh, shit, did they know about all the Playboys I have under my bed?
Yeah. Oh, shit. Yeah. Hopefully God needs one more guy in his band.
Yeah.
That's your only chance.
Where'd everybody go? Oh, no.
Well, devil went down to Georgia.
That's right.
Yeah. No, it's kind of wild. And like, you know, also I think working for the power company and seeing at times how precarious the power grid system can be or could be, you know, not as much in our area as like, I mean, when they're asking people in California to shut off, you know, their AC or set your AC at 75, not 72, like that's you're walking on a fine line. But if there was a coordinated attack on, you know, a dozen substations across this country, we would find millions of people out of power for months.
Oh yeah, I went through Nashville with tornadoes, and our city shuts down. And then one of my best friends is a lineman for Northwestern, and he came down duck hunting in January, and he looked up at our power lines. He's like, "Dude, who is hanging the power in Nashville?" He's like, "This looks like absolute shit. You guys are cruising for a bruising, and we have blackouts all the time, and then flooding, any kind of storms, ice storms. We'll be down for 72 hours. The Montana boy here's got a big old generator on his tour bus, so I'll just light up my whole neighborhood."
That's awesome.
And then wild too, my brother's gotten really good at solar panels, you know, just helping my mom wire up her system. We've been off the grid. She's 75 and still solar generator up in Elk Park. But he wants to put a little solar farm on his property in California. And he's like, dude, they don't want me to do this. They're like these taxes, and they try to stop him from doing it. And he's like, it's bizarre. He's like, they don't want you to be energy independent. And I'm like, I wonder why.
Yeah. No, it's something, the power thing, like when I built this house that I'm in, you know, I put a wood stove in there for a reason. I put a gas range in that takes no electricity for a reason. Like, you know, if you can, you know, and I have a pond or whatever, but if you can heat water, if you can keep your house warm, man, if you think about if the entire northern half of the country lost power for 2 weeks in January, I mean, people would be freezing to death, houses would all be freezing up, pipes all breaking. I mean, just the fact that people don't have a way to keep their own house warm with a wood stove puts you at a gigantic disadvantage. If you can stay warm and you then have the ability to cook some food, now we're talking, you can do all right. Now in the summertime, when it comes to, you know, keeping things refrigerated, that's a different set of problems.
Right.
That we only have to worry about for about 2 months out of the year.
Right. Yeah. Nashville's a different can of worms. And I find when the power goes out, I have this level of comfort. I'm like, I'm used to this. I was like raised in so much chaos that when shit goes south, I'm like, oh, my happy spot.
Yeah.
The world's ending. I feel awesome.
Well, when we lost power here this spring and we got our old kerosene lanterns out, it was actually a really good drill. And I was telling somebody else, a great drill, just don't even tell your wife or kids or anybody, but just throw your main breaker off on your house before they get home from work and just be like, yeah, I called the power company. They're working on it. And just stay out of power one entire night.
Right.
And see how well prepared you are to cook, have a lit house, you know, not have batteries charged, like all the different things. Right. And, you know, just having wicks for our lanterns, like I noticed when we did that, like we had a couple lanterns that were all dried up and crusty and the wicks wouldn't work.
You gotta trim them, baby.
Yeah, trim them and have new ones available and stuff like that. So I told my wife, I'm like, we need to get a couple of those set back up, you know, and have kerosene for them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's such simple things. I had a guy on the podcast, an old knife maker. We were talking about Rudy Ruana, but I had Jerome Winan on here, and he talks about as a kid growing up and being like late in high school before they had power or before they had a car. And it boggles my mind how we went in 2 generations from that, which was the norm, to where today, if we lost power, they talk about millions of people dying in the first couple weeks.
Yeah, it's crazy. Everyone's so dependent on these things that are, to me, it's a treat. You know,
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, I know what it's like to not have it. So I kind of treat it a little differently. And even my own family, you know, they're just used to it. They're just like, oh, this is how it is. And I'm like, you know, it's like you don't know what you got till it's gone. And I've seen it gone. So I'm just like, appreciate it. And I still get defeated by microwaves to this day.
Yeah.
So I never had one until I was 18 and moved to Los Angeles. And my roommate was like, why do you keep putting forks and spoons in the microwave? And I'd stare at it as the lights are bouncing. Shit's lightning going off. They're like, are you a fucking caveman? I'm like, I might be.
Maybe so. Yeah. So growing up in Montana, I asked you this a little bit earlier, so hopefully it's okay to ask, but was your last name Montana all along, or is this a stage name?
Yeah, I had an interesting, and a lot of people ask me that, and I love hearing that, Hannah Montana. I'm like, oh, why don't you come up with an original joke, douchebag?
Yeah.
But, yeah, so as a kid, I had my biological father abducted me when I was 5 or 6, and I had a pretty rough run of childhood when I was younger. And he ended up getting locked up, and then I had a new stepdad that was the crazy militia guy, and he was not good to me and my mom either, and he went away. And so I had, through some adoption process, they destroyed my birth certificate, and I looked at taking my biological father's last name back, and I couldn't because the birth certificate was destroyed when I was like 5, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. They're like, yeah, you can't have it. He's dead. He can't sign on it. I'm just like, what? And so then I went and started researching my biological father, and he was not a very good guy either. And then I tried to find his last name, and they said he was adopted, escaped an orphanage when he was younger, had horrible shit happen to him. And I was like, well, what is his last name? More importantly, what is my last name? And they're like, we have no idea. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to glorify bad men that did bad shit to me and my mother. And you know, so I was like, you know what raised me and taught me more about life is this rugged country and being stuck in the mountains with no power. And I was like, you know, it's the Native American route. I'm Montana, and I'd been called Montana since I was a kid, you know, because I was so backwoods, backcountry stuff. So I'm like, that's it. So, you know, we had it legally changed a long time ago. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's a wild story, and it's really cool to choose. I always say, like, the Native Americans, I think, do the naming stuff the best.
Oh yeah,
like
I loved it in high school, and be like, Johnny Running Bear, report to the office. I'm like, yeah dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, we have. I actually felt bad because we have an employee that started this spring down here. He's Native American, and I was trying to do something with his name, and I couldn't find. I was looking something up in our. I think it was his email address in our system that we had entered, and his last name is Little Son. And so I kept trying to figure out his name or whatever, and I was spelling it little S-O-N, right? And finally I went down to him like, dude, I can't find that email anywhere, blah, blah, blah.
S-U-N?
Yeah, it was S-U-N. And I'm like, I didn't even think of that. But I was like, God, that's a cool name, you know?
There's some friends in Butte, they're Blackfoot, and they've taught me how to work on trucks since I was a little kid. They still take care of my mom. They own a big junkyard in Butte. The McGoverns and I talk about Blackfoot Tom come down from the res, peace pipe smelling like the Grateful Dead. Give him a beer, he might give you a hit. That's just the way it is. So I write songs about these guys that I grew up around, but we had 3 generations. His dad's 98 and was a World War II veteran. And then you have the son and then his son. And so I did a video shoot at their junkyard. And one of the stylists came up from Nashville, and we had Indian motorcycle shirts. And so one of them was like, oh, I want to wear this Indian motorcycle shirt. And the grandpa saw it, and he kept saying, what tribe? And the stylist's like, what is he talking about? I'm like, you put a native in a shirt that says Indian, and she's like, oh my God. And he's like, what tribe? What tribe? And she's a big city stylist, so she had a friggin' heart attack. I'm like, you're getting canceled.
That's
like
awesome.
Good guys, man. I spent my whole life around the reservations up in the Flathead Reservation, and I'd go dance at the powwows in Ronan when I was a kid. I'd go up there, and I just always asked my mom, I was like, are you sure there's no Native American blood in me? Because I want to be Native so bad, because I thought it was the culture, and to this day, I'm just fascinated. I mean, you can see I got some of these rings and turquoise, and she's like, unfortunately, you're about as Irish, Scottish as it gets. But then at St. Matthew's in the Flathead Valley is the Catholic school I went to for a while. there was a white guy that came, and he was adopted by a Native American tribe. And I was like, yes, we can have white Indians. And he's like, well, it took me 10 years, living on the reservation and getting involved in the politics. And I was like, oh, that's quite a commitment. I don't know if I have time for that. But that's maybe when I get a little older. So.
Yeah. Well, so when you were abducted by your dad, how long did that happen until your mom got you back? Or
it's like debatable. My mom doesn't love telling me these stories. I get to find these little nuggets as I go on. And God, the other night in Kansas City, some lady came up, started touching my face and crying. And she's like, oh, I was there, blah, blah, blah. And you were abducted. And I'm like, why are you telling me this at the meet and greet? I have fans behind you. Like, can we have this conversation somewhere else?
No shit.
So I don't think it was a very long time, if anything. It was like a split custody thing where dad would get me for a weekend. Mom would have me, most of the month. And I think my mom said that she begged the judge. She's like, don't let Tim take Tim and Timmy. I was a junior when I was born. And I remember he put me in a yellow cab, and it was up right by Julie's, the restaurant. That's where we had that pawn shop, gun shop. And I got in a yellow cab, like 50s style New York cab, one of his buddies, and they drove me to Spokane. And then I remember he's like, all right, we're going to have to keep you locked in this room. And they'd feed me under the door.
No shit.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. And I have very vague memories, like sailboats on the curtains in the room, and there's a lot of traffic. And at that point, I wasn't accustomed to hearing traffic. And then I remember my dad was fine from what I remember, but he had some elderly people, specifically an old woman that I just have like really weird, not friendly memories of from that time. And I think it was only maybe a couple weeks. I don't know. But then I was playing and was in the Aaron Lewis tour last summer. And this lady showed up, and she's like, hey, I'm your dad's half-sister. And I'm like, no shit. So I finally cornered her, and I'm like, hey, what do you know about my kidnapping? And she's like, oh, I was there. And I was like, huh? And I started kind of getting anxiety. And she goes, and I said, I remember a mean old lady. She's like, it's probably me and my mom. And I'm like, oh, my God. And I started like looking at her and having these weird memories. And
That's wild.
She looked me in the eyes and said, I wish we would have kept you. And I had a fucking out of meltdown. And I was like, just bolted. And I'm like, not cool, that, I don't know, why would you say that to me? And I tried to call my wife. I'm like panicking, no cell service. So I had to play this whole concert, like just having this anxiety of like.
With your kidnapper in the audience.
Right, like somewhere. Kidnappers in the audience. I'm like, God.
That is wild.
Yeah, it could be a Lifetime movie someday.
It should be.
From that to the backwoods of the militia for 15 years, So.
Yeah. No, that's well, at the very least, you got one hell of a book.
Yeah.
I mean, one hell of a book, and you're still young. I mean, you still got a lot of story to tell.
38 and feeling great, baby.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you see so many artists have interesting backgrounds, right? Difficulty.
There's a big dad thing.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law just told me I was with Dave Grohl last night in Big Sky. He played with the Foo Fighters up there. And he did a documentary. He did not have a good relationship with his father. And he told me about this documentary. He's like, dude, do you know the amount of rock stars that either were abused by their dad, didn't have a dad, but they have this larger-than-life mother figure? And for that was me as well. My mom was always, taking the fall for me, and shit was bad, and she'd be getting me out of there. And, I can't blame her. It was, some of that stuff. I'm like, well, why did we stay? And
right.
She had to survive. These people had money and supported her and kept us fed. And so that put up with abuse,
Right.
And, but yeah, there's a big Tom Petty, Dave Grohl. I mean, the list goes on. Johnny Cash, of guys that either got beat up by dads, that became artists later in life. And it's kind of wild. So,
yeah.
Hey, if you're getting beat up, get a guitar, you'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Be just fine. So where did because this leads into the songwriting, right? Like that's how a lot of, you see it today on whether it's American Idol or whatever, somebody comes up and, they don't look like a singer. They don't look like, frankly, they are probably homeless half the time.
Right.
And they open their mouth and they sing some original, or even maybe they're just singing a cover of something, and they're unbelievable. And what makes them really unbelievable to me a lot of times is you can just hear that there's more in their voice, whether it's pain or a story, or there's something about their voice that just like when they sing something, you can tell they're singing it from such a different place than just like, I just want to be a singer, Did the songwriting, did you write songs when you were a kid, like going through some of this stuff, like when you started playing guitar?
Yeah, I'd make up just stupid songs all the time, and I spent so much time alone. I have 5 siblings, but they're all considerably older than me. So they did not grow up with the person that I grew up with, a stepdad. They all left. They didn't like him, and B, they were old enough to leave. So then we moved out in the woods, and I did not have friends. So I probably look like a schizophrenic crazy person, because when I'd play with my dogs, I would play like multiple characters in the woods with stick guns.
Yeah.
It'd be like we're acting out Rambo movies, and I'd play Rambo and then the enemy, and I think songwriting too, I just always was talking to myself. And it wasn't like a weird thing. It's just I was a little kid.
But man. I remember doing that. I mean, I grew up in Lincoln, and I didn't have anywhere near your story. But like when you went home from school, you were alone. Like you know, even if my parents were working, busy, doing everything they're doing. So I'd go outside and throw a baseball straight up in the air to myself and catch it a million times, or go to the river and throw rocks or whatever. Right. And honestly, make knives. I mean, that's what I did. And, you know, so you didn't have a way to stay connected with your friends at school.
Right.
Like kids today, they come home from school and they're still texting their friends or messaging from, who knows, 17 different apps. Right. But there was no connectivity, even for a person with power. Mm-hmm. You know, if you wanted to stand there and talk to your friends or a girlfriend or something like that, it was literally on a corded phone next to your parents.
Yeah.
So going out, and again, I think that's part of what's missing with youth is letting your mind wander, acting out all these different characters in your mind, and you know, playing cowboys and Indians and doing all this different, you know, being an Army Ranger and out in the woods with a stick, you know, chopping shit down, and you know, I think there's just so much creativity that comes from growing up as a kid like that.
Yeah.
You know.
And I definitely would be writing songs and little ideas. It didn't turn into something until high school when I started finding girls I had crushes on. So then I start writing songs for these chicks, and then I ended up winning the talent show in Butte High. No big deal.
A star was born.
Oh, yeah. The Butte High talent show, man, is where I cut my teeth. And there was a time, too, when that bad stepdad that I hate glorifying, even calling him we'll call him a step piece of shit for now. But he started taking my guitars away. And I didn't go out on dates. I wasn't allowed to see friends. I'd get home from school, and that was it. And he was the type of guy, move all those rocks from this side of the field to that side. And I'd come back and be like, it's done. He's like, oh, you're done early? Well, then move them back, and then you can move them back again. It was just constant.
No shit.
Constant torture of like just extreme labor.
Did you think about killing him? I mean.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a dark time. And when I found out, you know, I'd always dreamed that my biological father, because I didn't know a lot about him at that point, I thought he was going to pull down the driveway someday and kick his ass and take me to this great life. So I always had that dream. Right. So when I was 15, my mom nonchalantly walked in. I was lacing up my logging boots, and she goes, hey, by the way, your dad died a couple days ago. And she just kind of was like, oh, because we didn't talk about him much, but she didn't know that was my only saving grace, was he's going to pull down the driveway. And he's going to get me out of here. That was rock fucking bottom for me. Really? I remember that. I was like, there's no hope, you know?
Yeah.
But music, and I was getting to, is the fact that this person realized that the only thing I had at that point was music and guitars. So then he started taking my guitars away.
Yeah, so taking your happiness away.
He'd lock them up. So I would literally drop a guitar out of the back of that trailer house, and I'd walk by, because he'd always make sure I didn't have a guitar on me to go to school. And my mom would sneak around the back of the trailer and hide it in the back of the truck. And then I'd go to school. And a lot of teachers at Butte High knew some stuff that was going on. And I'd say, hey, can I go play guitar? And they'd give me a pass to go to the choir room in the back room and play guitar at Butte High School.
Really?
And so I'd have to, and then same with Auto Shop. Mr. Shea, I had my old Chevy, I'd work on it in there, and I'd be like, hey, Mr. Shea, can I play a little guitar? He'd be like, all right, you got your assignments done? He's like, yeah, go play guitar. So I'm not allowed to play at home anymore. And so he let me play at school. So
God, that's crazy.
Yeah, and then it became problematic because I won the talent show and they put it in the paper. And I'm like, how the fuck am I going to explain that I just won the talent show? I'm not supposed to be playing music. So it was, fighting to play music. But then now I get into the big leagues, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's like, man, it's a tough game. And I'm like, it ain't a tougher game than when I was a kid. I can tell you what, I'm used to being shit on and told I ain't going to do something, this and that. So to this day, I tell my manager all the time, he compliments me. I'm like, please don't compliment me. Tell me I suck. I work better off of that.
Yeah.
So
did you, when you graduated high school, did you immediately like, I'm out of here, I'm gone?
Oh, I'd moved out at 17.
You did?
Yeah. And then I became a nut job because it was getting bad. I was getting bloody noses all the time, stress. And I was like, God, and that was from probably 7 years old till I was 17.
Was that hard, like leaving your mom behind, like worrying about her? Or?
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I moved into Butte, got a house, and with a bunch of college kids, and they were making fake satellite cards and fake IDs. And I was just this kid that had never had a life up until then. And so I had a fake ID.
Did that train just run off the rails?
Oh, my God. And then I started, when I was 15, I started getting a Social Security check because my dad died, and it was like $1,500 a month. So I'm freaking rolling, right?
Yeah, right.
So I had a T-Bird, a Harley, my old rust and red Chevy that I still have to this day, and this party house.
And freedom.
And freedom. And just that house 7 days a week was just filled with kids partying, like out of control.
Yeah. Damn.
I remember my mom bringing me cookies on St. Patty's Day one year when I was 17, and she comes in with the cops.
No
She's
shit.
like, Timmy, Butte Police Department's here looking for you. And I'm like, oh, shit. She's got, shamrock-shaped cookies that she baked for me. There's kids running everywhere, green beers and bongs.
Well, and for people that don't know, that are listening to this nationally, like Butte, Montana, Butte, America, as they call it, is the place in the country to be for St. Patty's Day.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's an incredibly, it has an incredible amount of pride in their Butte roots and the copper mining and everything that was happening. And Butte was the largest city in the state back in those old days. And so
that's why it's got the number 1 on the license plate. And now other cities have gotten a lot bigger and they get pissed because Butte still has 1.
Yep. Yeah. It's wild, but yeah, St. Patty's Day there. So I can't imagine as a kid with a bunch of other kids living with them and just having a ball.
That was wild.
Sure was wild.
Yeah, went from nerd to Mr. Popular and somehow graduated. I remember the dean of men when I crossed the stage was like, I don't know how you miss 100 days of school in 1 year or something. I don't know if it was 100, but it was just out of control how much school I missed.
Yeah.
And he gave me my diploma and off I went to Los Angeles.
Is that where you went?
Yeah.
For music?
Yeah.
Music?
I had recruiters coming around when I was 17 because I was up there off grid running in military combat boots and doing logging shit. So I thought, man, and hunting and fishing. And I thought, man, this would be cool. It's 2002, something like that. And my mom would not sign that paperwork. She's like,
really?
Hell no. She's like, try music school, please God. She told me she prayed every night I get into music school.
Well, and that was right after 9/11.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had those guys coming up there, and then I sent a little audition tape off to Hollywood, California, and they accepted me and sent me all the paperwork. And my mom was like, praise Jesus, he's going to music school. So
yeah. What was that like?
That was wild because, again, I
mean, you're a real LA guy, obviously.
Right. And I lived right behind the Chinese Theater on Hollywood Boulevard in the old apartment I had no idea that Guns N' Roses came up in. And again, I was a fucking maniac because and to this day, I'm convinced that I'm such a wild, immature adult because I didn't get a lot of my youth. I wasn't able to be a kid at a young age.
Yeah. So
I'm just a giant bearded kid, and so yeah, LA was wild, man. It was just party was on and just shit was out of control, and I learned a lot, but I'm glad I got some of that stuff out of my system. But it was rock and roll and partying and staying up for days at a time and.
That had to have been a hell of a culture shock from off grid to Butte, Montana, to straight to LA.
Yeah, it was wild.
Elk Park. Were you in Elk Park at that point when you were in Butte? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, that would be crazy. What did you start a band when you were down there?
Yeah, I had a rock band, and I brought a drummer back from Butte, my buddy Logan Duddy, and we're still good buddies. He came to LA for like a week and was like, you guys are fucked up. And he left in the middle of the night and didn't tell us.
Really?
Pretty sure we pawned his guitar to buy drugs the next day.
Yeah.
It was wild. But I put a little band together and we never really played out. It was one of those funny things where we talked about the band more than we played with the band. We're like, oh, dude, we're so badass. And that was a common thing down there. People would be like, dude, have you heard that guy play guitar? I heard he's badass. And you never heard these dudes play guitar, but they acted badass.
Yeah.
And so we had this band and we maybe practiced once or twice. And I would practice guitar a lot, songwriting stuff, and just trying to you're like, oh, if I can get a record deal and I can play the Whiskey a Go-Go and this and that. And just kind of a dream, Yeah. And most of those people, I'd say, God, 90% are regular job folks.
Right.
And I get messages from them all the time like, I can't believe you're doing this, dude. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I was always like, I'm going to do it. I'm never going to quit. But I think my Montana upbringing, was taught me that shit of this, it's a hard business, but it's not as hard as that was.
Right.
Right.
No, that's something. And it's also your chance for to escape to something better, you know.
Right.
And you see a lot of pro athletes that came from terrible situations and all they had was a basketball,
Right.
you know, like, and a hoop. That was
Yep.
it, you know, or all they had was the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, my kids are pretty athletic, pretty good at sports and whatnot, but they live a pretty damn comfortable life. I mean, they don't have to worry about where their meals are going to be, and they can get all the sleep they need and all the love they need. And it's like, and I've talked to my boy about that. I'm like, there's some kid somewhere your size, everything about you two's the same, but all he can think about 24 hours a day is what could be someday if he can like make it on the field, right?
Yeah.
Or on a court.
I worry about that a lot because you see kind of historically people that struggle, you know, do great things in life, and then they're successful, and then their kids are just kind of lazy. And I'm like, oh my God, do I need to like starve these kids out?
I know.
I need to rough them up a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, how do I make them, you know, appreciate shit that I appreciate because they've got it fucking made, you know?
Right. No, it's tough. But I mean, well, and we'll get to it, but like with the move you're making right now and coming back to Montana, that'll be.
Oh, that's a big part of it.
Yeah. And that's some adversity for them. I mean, in their lives, like you say, it's not going to be hard in the sense of like trying to survive, but it's a hard adjustment, hard change for sure. Yeah. But we'll get to that. I want to go through like, so LA partying, just being a young rocker trying to figure it out. Where did you stay in LA for quite a while, or did you come back to Montana?
I did a year, failed out. I did good at the classes I wanted to do good in, and then music theory, music reading, I tanked. And
it sounds like my when I flunked out of college in Bozeman because I duck hunted too much. I went to a few classes I liked, but
yeah, I'd do the classes I thought I needed. You know, I'd go train with Ken Steiger, this metal guitar player, and he'd teach me that, and then I'd go. You know, I had parties to throw.
A la carte.
Yeah, I had chicks to meet. Dude, I'm fucking busy. You want me? You want me to go to music theory instead of partying on Hollywood Boulevard?
I got a theory for you.
Are you insane? But I came back. I'll never forget. I rode the Greyhound bus from Los Angeles to Butte, Montana, with a bass player I found, Andy Boone, who I'm still friends with. And we came back and to Butte. And we said we knew we could rehearse in Butte and get the band together. That's when we started like rehearsing. And I got my old drummer, and I had my Harley. And it was like May, and it was still cold out. I remember it. And I took the Harley out for a ride, and I got rear-ended by somebody going like 60 miles an hour on Harrison Avenue and shattered my leg, tore my ACL, broke a windshield with my head. Lucky that I survived that. And I was like, well, I didn't see that fucking coming. So that kind of slowed that summer down. So then I went back to Hollywood on pain medication in on crutches. And then I was even wilder, man. I was the one-legged fucking party maniac. Like, hey.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
So I brought Logan back with me, and I took another swing at semester 1 of Musicians Institute. Failed out again because I didn't do the classes that I needed to get the credits. And I met a blind guitar player by the name of Johnny Hyland that said, I live in Nashville, and I saw him play guitar. And I'm like, I've never seen anyone play an instrument like that. And he said, man, move out to Nashville, and I'll teach you how to play guitar. And I was like, you know what? This limpy sumbitch going to Nashville.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. That's amazing. What year was that?
06, I think, 2006.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you live with him then, or did you?
No, I got an apartment kind of by Vanderbilt University, but I would go drive him around and stuff because obviously he couldn't drive. So I got an apartment.
Well, he could, but.
Right. My brother tells a story where he drove in Montana because he was the only sober person leaving a keg party. And everyone's like, have the blind guy drive, and he can see a little bit, right?
At least he has a good excuse for when he crashes into something. But he
definitely does not get a driver's license. But they had him drive back, and he said he made it from Whitefish, Montana, all the way back to Kyla and didn't fuck up. And he said he pulled in the driveway, and he's like, shit, maybe everyone's wrong and I can drive. And he said he went down another road and hit every mailbox. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So how does it work in Nashville? So you moved there, and this isn't like the old days. I mean, this is just, 15 years ago? 15,
17, I think.
17.
Yeah.
So like, how does that work? Did you get a job while you were there as well?
Yeah, actually, that timeline was wrong. I got in trouble and lost my license. When I was 20, I got a DUI in a 1970 Camaro. Really dumb move. Mm-hmm. Don't drink and drive, kids. Do the watermelon crawl. So I moved to Nashville and had no driver's license. So I had to get a job But I also had gotten a settlement from the motorcycle accident. So that's the interesting turn of the story. Old Timmy got $100,000. And I was
nice.
like, fuck yeah. My brother's like, pay off school, dipshit, which was the smartest thing I ever did. And then I just burned the rest of the money really fast on guitars, a couple bar tabs, $3-4 grand here,
Yeah.
What do 20-year-olds do?
It was really an investment in your music career.
Yeah, investment, and paid a buddy to drive me to Nashville, drop me off, and then ran out of money and had to fry chickens at Harris Teeter for about a year wearing a beard net and a hair net, and that had to be at work at 6 a.m. to open the grocery store. And all the country stars, Dierks Bentley, Leanne Rimes would come in and they'd be like, can I get some chicken? I'd be like, you guys want to hear a song? They're like, absolutely not. How about the chicken?
Yeah, give me my chicken.
Very humbling first year in Nashville, and then started.
But that's got to provide some serious motivation, too, to be like, I got to work a little harder over here on my music to make sure I can quit doing this shit as soon as possible. Yeah,
and I bought a little recording rig, so I was writing and recording some really terrible songs that I listen to now and chuckle, but you got to start somewhere. And at some point ended up going to Tootsie's Orchid Lounge, and I brought my Butte fist fighting mentality with me, and I got in a fight there one night, and the owner's son saw it, and he goes, you should be a bouncer. And I was like, all right, one step closer to music. I can be a bouncer at this most famous honky tonk in Nashville where Chris Christopherson and Willie Nelson used to work at. So I started bouncing, and then I started bar backing, and they finally gave me a music shift in the back room. So it took about a couple years to get a gig to where I was performing back there. So.
And did you have some bandmates at that point, like in Nashville?
Or
do you just kind of like
pile of
pick
hired
some
guns,
people up?
And I met two guys from Kalispell, Montana, Jonathan Newton and Lauren Newton. And Lauren ended up getting killed in an accident a couple years after that on a tour thing. He got run over. It was horrible. But I teamed up with those two guys, and I found a group of three of us were from the Flathead Valley, and then Johnny Stanton played bass. He plays for the Steelwoods now. And so we had a little band, and we started playing in the back room and just started trucking. And then I just started booking shows back in Montana, specifically Evil Knievel days. And so we'd take 3 days and come up and play EK days. So
what was that like to come back to Montana with a band where you weren't allowed to play guitar by your stepdad?
Yeah.
To have a concert?
It was awesome because it'd be a massive crowd. And that's where I cut my teeth and learned how to entertain crowds. And that's where I met Travis Pastrana and the Nitro Circus guys, and I'm friends with to this day. And it all kind of go to this city where music is happening, tighten your skills, bring it back to where you started, tighten it up, keep going back and forth. And I did that for years. And I think it was the first or second time I did Knievel Days is when they booked me at the Shoto Rodeo and David Letterman shows up.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I found myself 3 months after that going to the Ed Sullivan Theater, and I'm like, fuck, this is easy. Dude, I'm going to be a superstar.
Yeah.
Not so fast.
Yeah. No shit.
Had to go back to the drawing board, but I'll tell you what, David Letterman gave me a taste of the big time way too early. Huge bands can't get on that show. He saw me in Shoto, liked me, stayed in contact, and had his booker book me. So I got to go play, and I didn't have a manager, a booking agent. I was a musician playing one night a week at Tootsie's. And here I am at the Ed Sullivan Theater with Dave. And I played a song I wrote about my hometown, Butte, America. It was the best song I thought I had.
Yep.
And got a taste of that. And I thought the phone was going to blow up the next day. And I was going to have a record deal and a publishing deal. And it was all history. And my wife and I even went and maxed out a credit card on some T-bone steaks. You know that Orchard Bank, low credit? They make those for low credit folks.
Yeah.
And I came back, phone didn't ring, and I was like, son of a bitch. But it gave me a taste of the big time. And I was like, that was fucking awesome. That was the biggest adrenaline rush. There ain't a drug or anything on earth that can replace the feeling of performing in front of a national TV audience.
Yeah. When did you get married in the process of all this?
Oh, don't ask me that. I'm going to get divorced if I don't get this right. In 2000.
She's going to divorce you anyway, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, I know. 2007. So she met me at Tootsie's. I was working down there. Yeah,
is she from down there?
No, she was from Northern California, and she was there. She had a corporate job. I think she was with Rubbermaid Commercial Products at the time. Okay. She was there for a conference, and girls would always come in. I'd wear a big cowboy hat and be running beer up and down or doing the door. They'd always hit on you, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to stay at the bar till 4 a.m. and you see them leave at 2 with other dudes. So I just got so jaded and was like, nope, any girls hit on me, I'd just be, fuck off. I know how this works, done it a million times. But this girl came back twice. And I'm like, I've never had a repeat customer. And she started, hey, what's up? And I'm like, what's up? And She tells people too, I got off work that night at 4 and I called her and woke her up in her hotel room. I was like, you want to hang out? And she's like, no. I was like, where's your hotel? I'll come over right now. And she's like, absolutely not. So I ended up going to California to see my brother, who's the solar panel guy now. That's not what he does for a living. He just is really freaking good at it, like better than most companies. And she lived maybe an hour from his house, and she came down and hung out. And by God, I swear it was 3 or 4 months later we got married.
No shit.
At Tootsie's during one of my shows.
No shit.
Our marriage certificate says Church, Tootsie's, Orchid Lounge.
That's super cool.
Got married in a honky tonk, man.
And she moved to Nashville with you? And
yeah, she got a transfer shortly thereafter. And yeah, rest is history. 4 kids. And
that's really cool.
Yeah, she was the one that, like you were talking about, getting encouraged by your wife to step it up. She's like, hey, you should stop playing cover songs every night and go write your own songs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it was draining, man. And it's a necessary thing you have to do, right? You have to learn to cut your teeth. But if you play your own songs, this crowd stops. They don't give a shit about your own songs. They want to hear Hank Jr. and Sweet Home Alabama and all these cover songs. I just realized I was learning to perform, but I was spinning my wheels because when I was done performing there, I'd put my guitar down and I didn't want to touch it because you had to play for 4 hours straight, which is a long ass set. And these guys still do it to this day. Every bar is packed from 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. Just dudes playing 4-hour shifts for tips. And so she's like, hey, I've got a good job. Why don't you stop playing Broadway and start writing songs? And then that went into a couple years of writing songs until I got my first publishing contract, which is a small salary where you try to write songs for other artists.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I wondered, and I learned a little bit about that. We were talking when my wife and I had met Thomas Rhett, and we were talking a little bit about and how that songwriting stuff all works, and how basically people are just together in like think tanks down there in Nashville, just guys working together, just like writing song after song and pumping them out there, trying to get somebody to pick them up. So were you doing it, were people just picking up your songs so that you were writing solo, or were you working with like other guys?
I was collaborating, so co-writing, they call it.
Okay.
So you go to an office and it gets, I mean, a lot of guys do it and it works, but man, sitting in an office building trying to be creative just was killing me too. I was like, oh my God, this is so stale.
And you're paid a salary to go in there as if you're just working any job?
You're given a draw, so basically they give you X amount of money,
okay,
and then if you get a song to hit, they recoup that. So,
okay.
And if it doesn't work out, they drop you and everybody walks. So it just basically keeps the lights on. And
did you learn much through that process?
I learned a ton. I mean, it's good to go with guys that kick your ass. You go in the room, you get embarrassed, they run circles around you, they leave, and you're like, okay, how can I be better? How can I, go to the next level? And so I did that for quite a while. And I think my first cuts, I had 2 Kid Rock singles, and I ended up writing those with him. Tennessee Mountaintop, Greatest Show on Earth. I think one was top 10 single, and one was top 40 for a second.
And you wrote it with him?
Yeah, with him.
Okay.
And another friend, Cat Gravitt.
Yeah.
I met him at some point.
How'd you meet? I
think that was
Kid
Rob O'Neill. The Butte guy, Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
Because I was sending, the first DJ to play me on the radio was Tom O'Neill in Butte, Montana.
Okay.
And his younger brother is Robert O'Neill, and I'd see pictures in his studio of Rob. And I was like, what's your brother do? He's like, he's a SEAL. I don't know what team. He comes home once a year and doesn't say shit. And so I said, can I send him music? So I started mailing him music to Afghanistan and stuff and said, hey.
So he was still active duty then before because he's one of the ones that the Bin Laden shot raid. Bin Laden in the face.
Yeah. So I'd send him stuff and he got out and he actually bumped into my wife in the airport. It was like, hey, I just got out of the Navy and I appreciate your husband being so cool to me. And, got a wild story coming out and this and that. And so he met Kid Rock, linked me with Kid Rock. So he helped me make a lot of connections. Butte guy, fellow ginger. So
yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I was when hanging out with Derek Wolf. He was up here hunting together, and he was talking about Kid Rock and just what a cool dude he is. And yeah, that's cool. And I love his music, and it's interesting because like I can, you guys have. You can just tell by different people's music that like these dudes have to be friends somehow.
Yeah.
You can just tell they jive.
Yeah, Derek met Kid at my birthday duck camp down in Arkansas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That looked like a freaking blast.
Yeah, we didn't know Bob was coming, Kid Rock, and he He's like, hey, landing my private jet at the FBO. And I'm like, no shit. He lands this jet in Stuttgart, Arkansas. It says American Badass on the side.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
He said his phone blew up. Like John Daly's an Arkansas guy. Was like, hey, I heard you're in Stuttgart. And his funny response is, how'd you know it was me? His middle finger on the tail wing.
Yeah.
Like, who else would that be?
Yeah, no shit.
But he showed up, man, and just hung out with everybody, treated him like gold. And him and I shared a room, and we had a blast. And then we ended up flying to Sarah Huckabee's inauguration dinner randomly the last night. And he's like, I want to treat you guys to a good time. And I'm like, Bob, it's a 45-minute drive. And he goes, yeah, but it's a 6-minute flight. I was like, all right. Okay. And then all my redneck buddies, the Pardews down at Duck Camp, are like, shit, man, all we got is camo. This is a black tie event. And kid's like, I think it'd be cool. So we roll in there with camouflage. So we're just all, whooping it up, and at some point I end up on stage, and I'm like, my wife's gonna turn on the news and be like, I thought you were duck hunting. What are you doing at a fucking inauguration right now?
Yeah.
I'm up there playing, and it was just like, this is an interesting turn, to own a jet.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, I saw you guys play for the first time. I saw you guys play live, and I think you guys kind of had a smaller skeleton crew, but you guys there was 3 of you, but down at the Black Rifle Ranch in Texas for the adaptive athlete shoot. I think that was last year.
Yeah, Dudley was down there, and they had us do a little stripped down acoustic thing.
Yeah, but I told my wife, I was like, I couldn't believe for being quote unquote stripped down, how freaking good and how much just how amazing you guys were with not even like your whole setup and your whole band, because you literally flew in, did that, and we're flying right back because you had shows the next day.
Yeah,
and I told her too, just how impressed. I cannot play musical instrument whatsoever, and I absolutely love watching people play instruments. I love watching people, whatever it is, whatever they're good on. When you watch somebody that's so good, and you guys, the way you guys play, and then your songwriting to me caps it off. When you're playing River Kids or you're playing whatever other songs, your Butte songs, and so much of it. And I'm probably biased because it's Montana, right?
Right.
It resonates with me because you're singing about places that are an hour from where I grew up,
right.
Hour and a half. So it's just so cool. And you guys have such a unique sound. And that's the other thing I was going to ask you, it's interesting because Nashville country music radio for the last 10 years just has developed in my mind so much of this sound that's just kind of so many of these artists sound the same, right? Yeah. And what I'm seeing lately, and I feel like I have my finger on the pulse of this stuff a little bit through my kids, because I have a 18-year-old daughter. You met her, well, she was working downstairs here, and then I have a 17-year-old daughter. I guess Demi's now 19. 19 and 17, and then my boy's 15, Macy's 13. But they're getting into these artists that don't have that Nashville sound, Zach Bryan and these different singers that are becoming super, super popular. But when you play their music, it's not like this big produced Nashville sound.
They had to kind of do it their own route.
Yeah.
They're not welcome to the mainstream country crowd, which I've been struggling with for years. Everyone's like, you're too rock for country. You're too
well, and that's what I was going to ask
abrasive,
you.
And you're too rowdy, and your music's too loud, and your beard's too long, and you're not playing the game. And so it's a different world down there, man, and the politics of it all is just kind of weird.
Are you with a record company?
Yeah, and I've been with Broken Bow Music Knox, which is Aldean's over there, and Lady Wilson and Jelly Roll, and they're cool. They're swinging a bat at things that are different. I mean, if you look at what they did with Laney and Jelly Roll,
Jelly Roll with what he's doing, and
yeah. So they're finally. I've been there 3 years, and it's kind of funny. The Lord works mysterious ways. I was like, man, I don't think they're ever going to play me on the radio. We should just take this opportunity to buy this property in Montana and move home and, just tour. I know I can tour forever. I've got a really interesting pockets of fans all over the country that support us and have kept the wheels moving for years. And I was like, maybe commercial radio is not in the cards. And I turned in this little rock thing that I cut with a friend in a tough shed. A tough shed.
No shit.
Yeah, he's got a computer rig in there. He lives 3 or 4 houses up from me. Our daughters play together. His name's Michael Wilshire. and he does a lot of TV stuff. He did the Terminal List theme song, and so Jack Carr's always posting his stuff, and he has a different name for that. It's like a fake band he started to do that stuff. Pretty cool. But we just started cutting this stuff, and I said, man, let's just go hard. I just don't like being in the constraints of the Nashville, what you're supposed to sound like. I'm like, let's go hard and do some rock shit. I grew up listening to Nirvana and Alice in Chains, and of course I loved Charlie Daniels.
There's just
Crystal
such a lack of that right now.
Right. So we swung a bat at this hard rock shit, and I'm playing guitar on it, which in Nashville, they don't want artists playing guitar on stuff. You know, it has to be this session guy. And then you read the credits, and you're like, why are there 12 guys playing on every record in Nashville? And they're amazing musicians, obviously, but it's a sound. It's the radio sound. Something hits, and they chase it with something that sounds just like it, and then they chase it with something that sounds just like that.
That's what I'm complaining about.
Right. And then so we turned it in thinking that might be it for me with the record label, and they called and said, hey, man, we think you got a hit rock song. So now, and we'd already signed the paperwork, so I get a call. They said, you're going to commercial rock radio end of August, early September. And I was like driving my truck, and I got like emotionally overwhelmed and started crying and almost crashed my truck because I was like swung a bat at this in this town for 17 years and missed. But it was always some slow thing on the side that people didn't expect. Like, Charlie Sheen's directing this video. How the fuck did that happen? Boom, that moved to the next level. Yeah. So I've always went around the norm, and it wasn't intentional. It was just doing what I knew what to do and making a connection here and knowing that maybe I could do that. And then, working with some of the brands like Traeger and Black Rifle, they would post videos, and that would get it up here, but it was never a conventional route for me. But neither was my life. The whole story up until now is just bizarre. But to find out the same month that I'm closing on this property in Montana and thought that shit was going away, the shit's going to happen all at the same time.
And you're only in your 30s.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because, like, you've been doing this and like grinding at this, like you say, for the last 20 years, but you're still only in your 30s, Right. And it's amazing because it does just take one connection, one hit, one person deciding, put this fucker on the radio.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think if there was ever a time for an artist like you with a sound and the songwriting and the look and just everything that's you, that's not Nashville, like if there was ever a time that I think the world's ready for that kind of music, it's right now. And I mean, look at Chris Stapleton. I mean,
he's the best.
He doesn't have that polished, good looking 23-year-old kid, with the country music, the Nashville sound or whatever. But he wrote that shit to stay in the game.
He
did. He wrote for years.
All those hits. You look at his catalog and you're like, wow.
And then he comes out on the CMT Awards with Justin Timberlake, and
that blew my mind. I don't watch a lot of award shows, but that night I happened to be watching. And I was like, wow, because I had written with him, and I got to sit down with him and Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top in the songwriting room, and everyone's like, what was that like? And I was like, I was just fucking terrified. I'm like, guitar legend, Chris Stapleton, holy shit, we wrote this song, and I still have the work tape that I listened to because Chris is singing it, but you hear me barging in a little bit, even though I can't even touch that guy with a 10-foot pole with his vocals, but I'm just like, I just need this to play my kids someday. Then we wrote a song, and then Billy Gibbons in the background ripping, and I'm like, okay, I can die now.
Yeah.
I'm a happy man.
Awesome. No, that performance, and Justin Timberlake crushed it too.
Oh,
I mean,
beast.
Both of those two, and they're so different. What in just look and everything that they do, but then when those two voices came together and the way that they went after that song was Tennessee Whiskey, right? I think that's the one.
Yeah, I heard that connection happen in Montana. It's not gonna say any names, but another artist was gonna do it, play Justin Timberlake's Cabin, probably over Yellowstone, Paradise Valley. I heard this from a pretty reliable source, and he said this other artist was like hemming and hawing about doing it. He said, someone said, hey, you got to try this Chris guy, and Justin didn't know who he was, and he's like, well, there's a catch. His wife goes with him everywhere, and they're like, okay, whatever, we'll bring his wife. And it was to entertain Justin Timberlake and friends in a cabin with lanterns. This is the way I heard it.
Really?
That connection happened here in Montana.
No shit.
Yeah, and Justin Timberlake heard this guy sing and was like, holy shit, we have to do something with this dude.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, but for you, like, I feel like you just keep, and that's also, I think, what resonates with fans is like when that story comes out or it finally hits and they're like, no, this guy just kept grinding.
Yeah.
Kept doing his thing and didn't conform. because people are into artists. I tell people, even with our knives all the time, like, our knives are fine, but people are buying us, right? They're buying the story, the brand, the employees. It's why we do like our weekly vlogs and we include our employees on it. Cause like, I think customers like to see behind the scenes, like who's actually putting their hands on your knife that you're getting, right? And I think that's what's so cool about social media is people can also follow now their favorite artists and they can see what you're up to on the weekends. And it's like, oh, this guy's out with Pastrana, or he's chopping his mom's wood in freaking middle of winter in Montana, right? Or he's out elk hunting with Evan Hafer or whatever, right? And I just feel like we live in a time frame today and for the next, foreseeable future that people can see through like marketing bullshit.
Yeah.
They can see through inauthenticity. There's so much. Well, you see people like, who's that dude you like that you introduced me to with the freaking face? Tom McDonald. Like Tom McDonald. That guy like self-records all of his own videos because they weren't going to put him on mainstream. I don't know if you've seen, wasn't going to put his stuff on mainstream. He's a guy, he goes against all of the woke agenda. He's this dude that just is not going to get on the radio.
Right.
And a record place isn't going to sign him, but he's freaking good.
Right.
And so he started producing his own videos and now he's a billionaire. I don't know how much money he's making, but
he's like a YouTube, he's more like YouTube artist.
He is.
All his money's coming from YouTube, basically.
Wow.
But his wife produces their videos.
Wow.
And the two of them just produce them in their house and they're crushing. And it's just
a singer or what?
Yeah.
Wow.
Singer.
Check him out.
It's rap.
Yeah, it's rap, but it's like, it's interesting. You would actually probably kind of like some of it. You'll really like his message.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
He's our kind of people as far as that goes. But the point is he's a guy that just was like, well, I'm not going to conform. So I'm just going to do it my way. Right.
Right.
And then people find it, and, it's the other reason I have so much confidence that you're going to find your way into the mainstream, into the radio. I think it's undeniable is like when we're driving down the road and I ask my kids, like, what do you guys want to listen to? And my kids will say, as much as they'll say Zach Bryan or any of these other newer artists or, more known radio artists, like Nashville artists, they'll be like, put Tim Montana on and they'll sing along. Like my little 13-year-old Macy can sing along to half your songs.
That's the funniest thing. I get it all the time is my kids.
Yeah.
My kids, like sing your songs, and I get tagged in videos all the time. And I'm like, should that 3-year-old be singing I'm Mostly Stoned? My mom hated that song until I said, Mom, what if it's about Old Testament stoned? And she's like, well, I love it then. I'm like, well, that's violent, but whatever.
Yeah, but being popular, I'd argue being popular with the younger crowd and the younger kids, like, guess who's going to be buying records and who's actually going to be downloading and sharing stuff and whatever.
Right.
Like, that's the future. It's actually something that we've talked about like, we're always asking our employees who are mostly, you saw them downstairs, most of them are under 25 years old.
Yeah.
And we're asking them, what YouTube pages do you follow? What hunting places do you like? What do you guys like to do? What are you hearing at house parties or at the bar or whatever? And trying to be current with the young people, with content and all that stuff, but so with talking about coming back to Montana, you guys just made a giant move in the last few days.
Yeah, we haven't closed yet. It's supposed to close on the 15th, but everything is transferring right now. But there's a place out in Wise River, Montana, population 44, called the Wise River Club, and opened its doors in 1896, was a hotel, and there was a flood, and I think in 1927 a levee broke, and most of the structures in Wise River were wiped out.
Yeah.
And the awning fell off the front, diverted the water around the building, and the building was salvaged. And it's been owned by mom and pop, great local people for 130 years, something like that. So
really?
The guy that Tom and Linda owned it for the last 15 years, and Tom Davis was from Scotland, and he just loved that place. And he'd booked my band. We played there. God, one of those first tours, man. We came up in the wintertime and played there. It was like 06, 07, something like that.
Yeah.
And there's still a signed drum head on the wall, and he'd always call me and be like, Tim, it's Tom Davis from the Wise River Club. And he'd leave me song ideas. He was a musician, and I just fell in love with the guy. He was such a sweetheart. And he passed away a couple of years ago, unfortunately. And last summer, I'm up there hanging out, and it's right on the Big Hole River. And his wife, Linda's like, why don't you buy this place? And I'm like, oh, I could afford it. And we talked about a number, and I called some friends and said, tell me this is a terrible idea. I called people much smarter than me.
Yeah.
Put it together, and I didn't want to oversell it. I just said, look at this. And everyone came back, and they're like, this is amazing. They're like, who's going to run it? And I'm like, I'd like to volunteer myself, my family. And they're like, you're going to move up to there from Nashville? And I'm like, yeah. And I just, for my kids, I'm on the road so much.
Yeah.
Constantly gone. And I come home to Nashville, and it's just between the city, and I don't like heat. I can't do humidity, and I can't do too much of humanity.
Yeah.
As much as I love people, I can't do that many people.
You combine humanity and humidity. And
it's the worst. Yeah. It's the worst. So I was just like, and trying to find holes in it to where it was a bad idea. And I believe, if it's the right path, it'll present itself and everything. My manager's like, you're going to national radio and you're fucking moving to the middle of nowhere. Why are you doing this now? And I'm like, I think it's awesome.
Look at me.
Right. Exactly. And I'm like, dude, I think it adds to my story. And
you can still do both.
I mean, so we're going to keep our place in Nashville, and then we're going to move up here. Our kids are going to a schoolhouse with 3 teachers and 3 students, my boys. And then my daughter's going to go either to the high school that I went to. And she said to me yesterday, she's the musician in the family. She's like, Dad, what if I win the talent show? And she's like, what would you do? I'm like, I'd probably be bawling in the crowd.
100%.
I'm going to have to start taking her instruments away.
What does she play?
She does piano, a little bit of guitar, but she's sidetracked all the time she doesn't have social media. Told her not until she's 16. And she just got an iPhone a year ago, but I just see her spending less and less time with music. I'm sitting here like, God dang it. But now she's been going to shows with me. She became a Foo Fighters fan over COVID and didn't want to tell me that she discovered Nirvana and the Foo Fighters because it was not cool to like the music your dad grew up listening to.
Right.
So it started at Father's Day. I was coming to do some work in Wise River and talk to the owner and paperwork and all that shit. By the way, if you want to do something terrible, get a Montana liquor license. It's like the background checks and fingerprinting and DOJ and just like, holy crap, wow, I'm not buying a nuclear warhead, am I?
Yeah.
But so I've been back and forth a lot. But she said, for Father's Day, you should take me to Bonnaroo. I want to see the Foo Fighters. And so we got backstage, and there's Pat Smear that's, was the additional guitar player to Nirvana before the band ended. And I told Pat, I walked up and I said, Pat, and I haven't seen him for years since before COVID. And I said, Pat, I told him a story about my daughter. He's like, where is she? And he just stands up, and you just see her face beat red as she's talking to someone from Nirvana.
Yeah.
And so then the family, it was so funny because we pulled out, and we're doing from Nashville about a week ago. And I said, I got a show at the world-famous Corn Palace in Mitchell, South Dakota, and I'm playing the world-famous Buffalo Chip with ZZ Top, which was 2 nights ago. And I've got the Yukon loaded down with all of our shit, a Polaris in the back filled to the gills with clothes and toys. I got 2 dogs. I got my Sprinter loaded down with all my gear, bicycles, motorcycles. To unload our musical equipment, you have to take all my family shit out. So my band's like, oh, my God, dude. And I got all the kids.
Yeah.
And so we're coming up. Do the concerts,
God, I hope you're taking you should be video vlogging this and shit.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of video. We're working on some really cool content about, fixing this bar up and stuff.
Yeah. People will love that.
Yeah. Then I get to Montana and I'm so tired and my phone pings and it says the Foo Fighters are in Big Sky. And I'm like, oh, and then my daughter looks at me and she goes, you got to take me. And I'm glad I did because Dave Grohl was very busy at Bonnaroo. His family was there. It's a huge festival. This was a private thing raising money for the River Foundation. It was the dude from, what's the movie of Brad Pitt about the rivers up here they filmed in Missoula?
Oh,
the River Runs Through It. It was the
yeah.
dad, the actor. I forget his name. Tom. He's also in Top Gun. He's one of the commanders in Top Gun.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's doing the event to raise money for the rivers. So I hit up the guys. I said, come see us. And now she got to meet Dave Grohl last night. And he gave her about 10 minutes of his time, which is unbelievable that he did that, and got a photo with her. And she's just like, yeah, and then she stood on the side of the stage, and there you could reach out and touch the band. We're so close to him, so it was pretty special. But she's getting into music, and she's seeing it, so now I'm like, hey, shut your phone off. You're not even on social media yet, and just fucking focus.
Right.
And I can't talk too much shit because I know if I would have had all these things, I couldn't have focused.
Dude, can you imagine if you'd have had free, unfettered access to boobies on your phone?
Oh, my God.
When you were 12, 13, 14.
You should see me
15.
driving down the highway now, riding that rumble strip. It says Pornhub on my van.
Kids have so much more responsibility than we did, to manage. Everything that they ever could want to wonder about is in the palm of their hand all 24 hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah. And taking my kids to Sturgis, I don't know if I recommend that. We're at the Buffalo Chip, and my kids look up and they see strippers spinning on poles. and then they're like, the subs are going off, and then the national anthem starts on the stage. So I'm like, oh my God, it's hard to hear the national anthem. So we all take our hats off. And then you see these strippers spinning mid-dance, and they kill the music, and they're like, oh, it's the anthem. And they, like, flip upside down and put a hand over their boobs. And then both of my sons are just like, wow, and the rocket's red.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, that's a new one. I've never listened to the national anthem while looking at strippers.
Yeah, it was very patriotic, man. Show them boys what they're fighting for, right? But that's like the fifth time that the family, because it's always we either go to Montana or we're coming home from grandma's, and they stop and do Sturgis with me. My wife's like, they have seen so many naked women at this point. My daughter, I remember she's like 6 or 7, the one that's a musician, is like, Dad, I'm worried these girls are going to get sunburns on their boobies. Bring your kids to work day.
Sunburns is the least of the worries of what they're going to catch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Jeez. Well, that's and I meant to ask you, before I get back to the club, what's the name of the song coming out on radio then?
The Devil You Know.
Can you find it on? Is it out? Like
it'll be out August 30th. We filmed, and I love filming my videos back in Montana. So I have 2 videos I came up and filmed in Butte, and we did it in an old church. And my mom showed up and goes, "My God, I was baptized here in 1964." And,
no shit.
I was like, "Wow, this old Baptist church uptown Butte." So it was a VRBO.
And you shot a rock video in it.
Shot a rock video, and my son. It was my 12-year-old's second appearance. His first appearance was in Mostly Stone, where Charlie Sheen was the director, so I got to work with Charlie, and he's really good. The other kids get nervous, and this kid, just out of nowhere, is just like knows how to cry on command.
No shit.
Because he does it all the time to me and his mom, and I'm like, cool, you're a little dickhead, but you're going to be in my video. So then he got to play young Tim, and we redid some abuse scenes where his stepdad comes in, rips the guitar out of his hand, and explodes a lamp into the wall. And my wife called me because she wasn't here, and she goes, I just got a call. How's Dalton? I'm like, well, he's crying. The actor Russ is crying because he had some childhood trauma, and he wanted to portray that guy. He's one of my King's Camo Raven Crossbows guys. He wanted to be the guy because he grew up, had a rough story. He's like, I want to get this off my chest. I want to be the abusive stepdad. I'm like, wow, the world's going to hate you. And the director started, everyone's just a fucking emotional wreck after the scenes. It was so hardcore to redo it. And my wife called. She's like, my kid better not need therapy like you need, you asshole. So I'll show you the video, but it comes out August 30th everywhere. And this is very important that everybody share it. This is where the rubber hits the road, baby. This sucker hits. We're putting a Waffle House in Butte. You guys can all come up and get them asses whooped for $4.99.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, for sure. August 30th, we're going to have to share that out for sure.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So with the club, with the Wise River Club, is that a place you guys are going to be able to, like, people can come from out of state and book and, like, have a family reunion or?
Yep, we're going to have the bar. Fishing? There's a music venue, small stage there. So already the amount of songwriter and artist, rock star friends that I've told about this are like, dude, count me in. So we've got 6 cabins. We've got 7 RV spots. Upstairs is an old 1800s hotel with 7 rooms. And you've got the restaurant, dining room, and the Big Hole River's right there. So we're going to support all the local businesses up there. And you can hopefully go online once we get our site up and book a fly fishing guide. There's elk hunting, there's snowmobiling, there's trail riding. And it's a really cool community. The people are great.
It's beautiful country.
Yeah, the Big Hole Valley. And I've got such a connection up there. River kids, if you watch the video, that's all my family on the Big Hole River. So when this opportunity came up, and again, I tried to find holes in it. I'm like, this is this and that. And we had environmental issues, and then the state ended up covering, the remediation of the soil because it was a gas station at one point.
Okay.
And so they got that all figured out, and we're just going to do it. And the funny thing is, we have lived in some shitty houses in Nashville because the amount of money my wife had to help me fund records with, and she's a VP of a candy company now. She does very well. She's a powerhouse herself, but she sacrificed so much for me to make records for the last 15, 16 years.
Yeah.
And we lived in these shitty houses, and finally we got to a point where I was able to go independent, and pay for my own business and get a Sprinter and my own tour bus and got my CDL, drive Charlie Sheen's old party bus.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But, we finally remodeled our house.
You're going to have to pass that piss test, son.
I know. That's right. That's right. I'm good at it. But we finally were able to remodel our house, and we haven't even been in it a year, and it's gorgeous, huge deck. And I'm like, hey, let's move into a bus in the Big Hole Valley. And the kids are looking at me like, oh, my God, we have lived in shit houses forever. We finally get it nice, and Dad's moving us into a giant RV on the Big Hole River. Like,
well, I
let's
mean,
do it.
It's probably a terrible investment too, because land in the last 20 years in Montana has just gone down and down. It's just,
Right.
Yeah, it's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, gonna lose all your money.
Yeah, so we're gonna get this thing rocking. I've got all the brands. You work with a lot of similar brands. I've called all of them. They're like, dude, old Cowboy Bar, in Montana.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many people can the bar hold? And like the stage area, like if you want to have,
It's very small stage area. You could probably fit 150 people in that room though. Yeah. It's kind of a community center too. It's cool. Like the kids after school come in there and all the fishing guides, and they get dinner, they get food to go, and it's very small, tight knit. There's a little mercantile. Do you say mercantile or mercantile?
Mercantile.
Yeah, there's a mercantile there. A lot of people.
But I'm definitely not the one to ask about English classes.
And then there's the H Bar J. So there's 2 bars up there. A little mercantile, a little post office.
Is there a little outside stage that you can do?
There's a field in the back. It's 8.5 acres. So we're going to clean that up. We're going to remodel the cabins. It's kind of over. And this, a widow owns it now. So she's she's got a little crew there, but no one's really taking a lot of care of the back property lately. So I want to clean that up, get that looking
good.
Have
some concerts out there.
Yeah, and do some concerts back there. So
that's awesome.
Welcome to Wise River.
Super cool. Now, are you going to do some hunting this fall?
Yeah, I've got Wyoming tags. I got antelope, mule deer. Remy Warren and I went on a hunt last year down there, and I met these great folks. Do you know Chris Alk that works with Remy?
Yep.
So he's like, hey, you got invited back. That was funny. I showed up 50,000 acres, and I could tell Gene, the guy that owned the property, he looked at my hair and shit, and I'm like, oh, no, here we go. Not a fan. So I sat next to him and said, Gene, you like Merle Haggard? He looks at me all funny. I start playing some Merle, and he's like, I got to like you. So then by the end of the trip, I took a nude photo. I don't know if you saw the photo I posted, but I put them on koozies, and they started selling out. It's this gorgeous mountain that you can see like 1,000 miles of Wyoming behind me. And I just posed and covered my junk. And I remember yelling at Gene. I'm like, Gene, can I take a nude photo? And he just yells back in the wind, you're a pervert. And I snapped the photo. Of course, I posted it on social media, lose some followers, whatever. And put it on a koozie, and they start selling out. And my wife is just like, please don't encourage him. Anyway, so I've mailed Gene a bunch of nude photos of myself.
That's awesome.
But apparently he's amused, so he invited me back. So I'm going to go hunt there. I got Montana tags. But we also have a national radio thing happening as well. So I've got to make sure I'm available to go. My manager's like, if I tell you need to go to Louisville tomorrow, you're going to have to go tomorrow and show up and play a 5 a.m. radio show. So I've got to make sure I'm locked.
Well, dude, you're an artist. You're a singer. Like you're born and bred to, your whole life's been to do that.
Yeah,
so that's 100%, and the club's awesome, but the club will always be there. And like you say, you've got a supportive family and friends.
Yeah. My nephew's going to run it. He's excited. And he's a big old boy with a beard. Looks like me. So.
No, that's fantastic. But I swear it's like, we were actually discussing this morning. Like we're talking about doing like a video of just, kind of some of the story I told you. And I kind of hit the wave tops this morning about like how I came up to now. Right. Well, that's from 11 years old to 42. Right. So 31 years to get to 42? Today. Yeah.
Finally, the girls you date half your age can legally buy you a drink. Sorry, it's my favorite joke for 42-year-olds.
It's actually, he's not a girl, but Tristan downstairs turned 21 today. So I'm
finally the dudes you date half your age.
Hey, we're inclusive around here.
That's right.
So, but 31 years of working, and like I tell my kids, I always tell my kids, whether it's working out in the gym or whatever they're doing, like you're stacking grains of sand, right? And like for the longest time, if I told you, hey, go fill up that train car full of sand, but you can only carry as much as you can pinch in your fingers into that train car, right? You would just be doing that for years and not feel like you're getting anywhere. And then one day you'd wake up and look and be like, some bitch is half full,
right?
But you're still only halfway there. And I tell them, you just got to keep stacking those grains of sand. And pretty soon it's a pile and it's a mountain. And the next thing you know, you're having avalanches, right? And like now it feels like you're just finally getting to that place in your career where like the avalanche could strike at any moment.
Right.
That avalanche of sand that you've been stacking up now all of a sudden starts to slide. And it's just, it just feels like you're right on that spot where, and I think all of the politics, the way the world is, the way the country is, I think what young people are seeking out, a lot of the way that things are changing. And I just think that people are looking for people who are authentic.
Yeah.
You know, and they're looking for individual artists to find. And that's a lot of times the ones you see that people fall in love on American Idol. It's, it's the simple guy that's not that good looking that is just this crazy weird artist out of the freaking subways of New York. And he's fucking unbelievable.
Yeah. The made by a machine artist thing is, I think, slowly going away because people, you can't buy authenticity. And you can tell it. You know, you go to people's social media, you're like, oh, did you make that or did your label group make that? You know,
right? Because it sounds like 30 other songs I just heard. You know, so and you know you can cuss, and I'm sure a lot of artists do. We actually talked to Red a little bit about this, but like how much things have changed from the old days of like Garth Brooks, Alan Jackson, George Strait of albums. And everybody bought, you know, tapes and CDs back then to today with iTunes.
Yeah.
And you can argue the places where that's bad for people, but also like, I'll have to find the guy's name. I can't remember, but I found a guy the other day. Like I was playing some artist and you know how it kind of runs out of like their normal, this dude only had like 6 songs on there, but then like starts to play artists like that person.
Right. Right.
And I found some dude I've never heard of. I was like, this freaking kid's good, but he only had 6 or 8 songs.
Right.
And it's like, well, that's a guy that's probably been grinding a long time too. And it feels like maybe for him, he's just on the verge, you know?
Right.
Which I don't want to make it sound like you're some new guy. You've been freaking crushing it all over the place. Like every time I see photos or videos of your guys' concerts, I mean, people are losing their mind at your guys' concerts.
I mean, we still have small ones here and there. You know, we'll play to 5 people and then we'll play to 5,000 people.
Yeah.
You know, but it's humbling. And a lot of fans I have are like, dude, I saw you play a room with 3 people. And I remember a room in Texas where 1 dude showed up. And it was fucking awkward. But I'm like, you know what? We're going to send it for this guy.
Yeah.
And we sent it. And by God, he comes out to every show. And ZZ Top, I watched a documentary. They have the same story. They said they're somewhere in Texas and the curtain opened and there's 1 dude. And he looked around and went to leave. And ZZ Top's like, whoa, don't leave. Don't leave. And they bought him a Coke or something. And they said, the guy still comes around 50 years later.
That's awesome.
So I have this theory of, you know, whether it's 5,000 people or 5 people. And a lot of artists, you know, try to put off we're sold out, this and that. And it's like, man, own your shit. Like, you know, we have markets that are really strong where we crush, and we have some that aren't as strong, and then we go out and support, but it's always gaining new fans and performing like you're at Madison Square Gardens every night. I don't care who's in front of you.
And when you go to those markets that aren't super strong, or maybe you're not real well known in, but you crush for that 200 people or whatever that is, right? And you know, 180 of those people go home and tell 180 people,
right?
Oh my God, I saw this freaking guy. I didn't know who he was, but they were just killer, you know, and they start downloading songs, right? And then they come to the next time you're in town. And I've said that I feel bad. Like sometimes you go to venues and there'll be a guy playing in the corner or a band playing and nobody's really paying attention to him. And the best compliment I can give you guys is like when you guys started playing down at Black Rifles Ranch, like you guys are so good and so dynamic that like, people like stop their conversations and start to watch, you know, and like when you can stop a room, it's not background music. It's entertainment.
Yeah.
Like,
I remember Dudley pulled a chair up right to the front and just sat there.
Yeah.
He was by himself. Like,
yeah. No, it was freaking awesome, dude. And then, you know, the way you guys can ad-lib stuff and, you know, playing with, you know, Matt Best, and then Matt's dad got up and played, which was cool.
He's the beast, man. I love him. Papa Best.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, cool, man. Yeah, appreciate you coming by the shop. It was really cool you showed up with your family, which is awesome.
We got to go make this Julie's connection. My mom's going to flip.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, well, don't be a stranger. We got to come down to that club and check it out. And
got a cabin whenever you want.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
Awesome. Thank you.